Hey, it's Dar here, out in the greenhouse doing Dar stuff. So this channel's pretty brand new. I've only been working on it for a couple of weeks, and just, right away I want to go ahead and let everybody know that I realized that the closed captionings weren't working the way we intended for them to be used, to what the way we intended them to work, and I thought I had it, but I guess I didn't. So I just want to make sure everybody knew that from here on out I was really going to try to make sure our videos had good captions, so that people can interact with our content well. So sorry about the previous videos. We're going to try to see about updating or uploading some closed captions, but I'm not real sure about that process yet. I'm still learning. Alright, so one of the things that we intend to do with this YouTube channel is, just really kind of like hit on all aspects of our lives as LGBTQ family. And, definitely in our family, one of those aspects is anti-racism. So anti-racism is a pretty important value to our family. We are a multiracial family, as well as, an LGBTQ family. But we live in a community that's been harmed by racism, and so as a member of our community, we feel it's really important to show the same love and care for our community. And so, when we know there's racism in our community, one of the things we want to do is make sure that we step up and address that and witness that and do our very best to counter that or disrupt that or dismantle that. So no doubt Joe Arpaio has engaged in structural, social, and individual racism, and so I don't think you have to go very far on Google to find that, but I'll go ahead and point to a few things real quick just in case you want to have some leads on what to research. So structurally, Joe Arpaio has bragged about being the toughest sheriff and law and order, yada yada. So there's a whole bunch of racism that frequently goes with law and order types, especially ones who engage in arresting and incarcerating people, and in Arizona disproportionately people of color. Structurally, Joe Arpaio had a really cruel tent city, is what some people call it, prison, and this he even once bragged that it was a concentration camp. So I'm gonna link a video to a walk through that tent city so you can see a little bit about how people were dehumanized there. And Joe Arpaio is also socially racist. As a matter of fact, he probably managed to really socially gather a really strong voting bloc in this last election. And he started that way back in President Obama's administration with contributing to the birther movement. So, he advanced this idea that, President Obama did not count as a citizen because he cast doubt and alluded to the idea that President Obama's birth certificate might not be real or valid, or, well, you can Google it. So what did this do? Of course, President Obama kind of handled that like whatever, but it galvanized a whole group of voters, and those voters turned out and they voted their white nationalist interests. Individually, I'll go ahead and just say, individually, he has shown himself to be willing to do acts of individual racism. If you look at some of his videos, you can, hear the words he uses. But also, he was found in contempt of court for advancing anti-immigration policies that, federal court had said, hey, knock that off. This is the words that are reported, your immigration roundups are not legal, stop it. And in contempt of court, Joe Arpaio willfully engaged in unlawful anti-immigration practices, detaining people who, had broken no law, just detaining them and having them brought into the system for deportation. So, a whole lot of racism there, and I'm sure there's many, many, many other things that, I'm not mentioning. So, just checking my notes here. So, he's a convicted criminal, Joe Arpaio is. So we have to wonder, why is Joe Arpaio coming to St. Louis? What does St. Louis need and want from Joe Arpaio that we, would benefit from bringing a convicted criminal, a person who willfully engaged in racist practices against federal judges' orders. And people who tend to be that law and order type need to be questioning right now, why is Joe Arpaio, such a draw? And I would say the draw is white nationalism. So, on this topic of white nationalism, so what can I contribute that's not already been said? And, a lot of people have spoken about it far better than I ever can. But I spent some time in reflection this last week, and I'm like, okay, so, what is my individual context? Where are my individual biases here? And I did research and, just read a little bit about him, and I was like, well, he's an 85-year-old dude, and he's being called here to St. Louis. What is going on here? And I decided I think I get it now. It's legacy. This is an issue where Joe Arpaio is trying to establish his legacy, and I think that as St. Louisans we should be disturbed by that, and I'll talk a little bit about that right now. So I'm a new grandma, and I'm constantly thinking about legacy. Am I loving my family enough? Am I leaving enough love in my family, enough of my imprint that is positive, that, my family will be impacted for generations by what I, give them. Part of the reason we do this channel is because, we know we're not going to live forever. Legacy, and then, of course, sharing with everybody while we're alive. But legacy is really, really important with people as they get older, and so we really have to watch ourselves when we think about the legacy we're going to leave for our kids. Are we going to leave that white supremacist, that white nationalist legacy for our children, or are we going to leave those embers of we're not going to go with this? Are we going to leave those embers of resistance to not go with this white supremacist, white nationalist legacy that has been in place for hundreds of years in our nation? The age situation. Joe Arpaio is, 85 years old, and, it'd be very easy to say, well, he's just the icon of this political party that I don't even have any belief in. What does it matter? Don't old bigots die? Let the racism go to their grave with them, But, I was recently educated by Dr. Kira Hudson Banks in a way that I hadn't thought before. I knew, racism doesn't go away just because people die. But I was really informed about, the systemic nature of it. The fact that people die, but they're constantly being replaced with new racists. So, Joe Arpaio being elderly and close to dying, this doesn't really mean anything, because, the racism isn't going to go in his grave and stay in his grave with him when he dies and be buried and no longer be a part of our society. As a matter of fact, I think that's a whole lot about why he's doing these late in life visits. He doesn't want his racism to be buried with him in his grave. He wants to make sure that, he's transmitting as much of his way of life as possible to the rest of the country. He's leaving his legacy. Don't give up on your elders. We're totally capable of learning and with new information. Some of us are actually very capable of radical transformation. And so please don't give up on us. But Joe Arpaio, he's been called in and called out. Is he really going to change? And is this really about his transformation? It is not. It is not. Joe Arpaio visiting here is about his legacy and about St. Louis City's transformation. What legacy is he leaving? Well, probably the legacy he's leaving is one of white supremacy, white nationalism, and probably what he's doing is engaging his audience to normalize his ideas, to make his ideas about who can be in the United States and who counts and who should be loved and lauded and who should be hated and despised. He's trying to pass that. You know, what does it mean that Joe Arpaio is coming and going to celebrate the name of Ronald Reagan? Well, you know, if you're LGBTQ, you know, please know that Ronald Reagan let a whole bunch of us die in the 80s. So, you know, this event at its very core is anti-LGBTQ. And then by inviting Joe Arpaio, it becomes, you know, just very racist and anti-immigration and just, you know, white nationalist. So this here video is, you know, kind of geared toward economically advantaged, skin privileged LGBTQ people, but you know, of course, anybody who's wanting to listen and chime in, please do. You know, and for LGBTQ people who are like, oh, well, this is an immigration issue, this doesn't really affect me. Well, you know, yeah, it does, because first off, people who are white nationalists really don't like us either. They don't like us because we're not the right kind of white person. We're the gay white person, or the lesbian, or the transgender white person, and you know, generally white supremacists like a certain kind of white, and we generally are not their preferred people. But it's also important to remember that not all of the LGBTQ community is white. So, you know, disproportionately, black and non-black people of color are being affected in our community. And so, you know, this is our work. This is our work to do. And so we need to stand by our siblings and throw down when we see racism, because it does affect the LGBTQ community. It affects the people of color in our community, and then by extension, the people who feel it's okay to be racist, they'll be the first to turn around, and they'll be also anti-LGBTQ. So there's that. You know, what should we do? Well, in any way we can. It's really our duty to disrupt this situation. In any way we can, we need to make sure that people observing that event from near or far are forced to recognize that, oh wait, you know, this isn't just the way we should be, this isn't just the way everything should be. You know, there really are other ideas, there are other ways of being. This white nationalism that's being advanced is not necessarily the best for me and my family. And so, you know, while we can't really necessarily, you know, change Joe Arpaio, we can analyze what St. Louis is asking from Joe Arpaio, because somebody in St. Louis is thinking we need the influence of this person, and somebody in St. Louis, a group of somebodies presumably, are, you know, looking for guidance, and so it's our duty to disrupt this event. You know, I don't know if I've done very well, you know, getting this idea across, but, you know, I'm going to try to put this together in a video that hopefully makes some sense and is succinct enough that, you know, you feel like you can listen to it, is personal enough that you don't feel like you're being preached to. You know, let's try something else. Let's not do Joe Arpaio's way. Let's try something different. What do we got to lose? You know, let's dream it and let's be it. All right, thank you so much for watching the video, and if you're still here, I hope you feel affirmed about a new direction. I hope you feel affirmed that speaking up on this is a good thing to do, and I hope you feel affirmed to try some sort of action, even if you're not exactly positive it's the best action. You know, let's try something transformational in a totally different direction. All right.